The smaller alien craft landed in every city on every continent, and what came out of them was something from a nightmare. They were tall, almost 8 feet, with long thin bodies covered in dark metallic armor that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Their heads were narrow and flat, with 4 black eyes that never blinked. They moved on 2 legs, but had 4 arms, each one ending in 3 sharp fingers. They did not speak. They did not make any sound at all. They simply walked forward in rows, sweeping through streets and pushing people toward open spaces like a farmer herding sheep. They carried weapons that fired beams of pale blue light. The beams did not kill. They stunned. A person hit by one would fall to the ground, unable to move for several minutes. The aliens would then pick them up with their extra arms and carry them toward the transport ships. They were collecting humans, just as their message had promised. In the first 10 minutes, militaries around the world tried to fight back with everything they had. Fighter jets screamed off runways and aircraft carriers. Tanks rolled out of bases with their engines roaring. Soldiers took positions and opened fire. None of it worked. The alien ships had some kind of defense system that could track and destroy any modern weapon before it got close. Missiles exploded in mid-air hundreds of feet from their targets. Bullets seemed to bend away from the alien soldiers. Fighter jets were knocked out of the sky by invisible pulses of energy. In 10 minutes, the combined military forces of Earth lost more equipment than in any single day of any war in human history. But then, something happened in a small town in Texas that changed everything. Cole Briggs was 53 years old, a retired Marine sergeant who now ran a feed store outside of a town called Comfort. When the power went out and the alien ships appeared over San Antonio to the east, Cole did not panic. He went to his back room, opened a locked cabinet, and pulled out his old shotgun and a box of shells. Then he got on his CB radio, which still worked because it ran on batteries and was too simple for the alien pulse to kill, and he started talking. This is Cole Briggs on Channel 9. Any Americans listening, this is not the day we lie down. Get your guns, get your trucks. Meet me at the crossroads on Route 27. We are going to find out what these things are made of. Within 15 minutes, Cole had 47 people standing at the crossroads. Farmers with hunting rifles, a grandmother with a pistol in her purse, 3 National Guard soldiers who had been on their way to their base when their vehicle died, 2 teenage boys with baseball bats, a woman named Darla Cobb, who brought a crossbow and a calm expression that said she had been waiting for something like this her whole life. Cole organized them quickly. He sent scouts ahead on foot, and they came back with news that a group of about 20 alien soldiers was moving through the next town, herding people toward a landing craft in the high school football field. We hit them hard and fast, Cole said. Aim for the joints in their armor. If bullets don't work, get close and use whatever you have. They attacked from 3 sides, using buildings and parked cars as cover. The first shots rang out, and something wonderful happened. The alien armor cracked. It turned out that the alien defense systems were designed to stop energy weapons, lasers, and advanced technology. But a 12-gauge shotgun slug was nothing more than a chunk of lead moving very fast, and the alien armor had no answer for it. The slugs hit the dark shells and split them open like eggs. The aliens inside were soft and pale, and they went down hard. Cole Briggs stood over the first alien body and felt something that he knew every human on the planet needed to feel right now. Hope. He grabbed his CB radio. This is Briggs. Their armor breaks with regular bullets. Shotguns work best. Spread the word. The message traveled fast. CB radios carried it across Texas. Ham radio operators picked it up and sent it further. Within minutes, the news reached other states, other countries. The alien soldiers could be killed with simple, old weapons. Far out in the Atlantic Ocean, Captain Lena Price stood on the bridge of the aircraft carrier USS Dauntless. and listened to the same report on a handheld radio that one of her officers had kept in his locker. Her ship was dead in the water. The alien pulse had killed her engines, her radar, her weapon systems, everything electronic. She had 3,000 sailors, sitting in a floating metal box with no power. But Lena Price had not become a carrier captain by giving up easily. She was 46 years old, tall, with gray streaks in her black hair, and a voice that could cut through a hurricane. She turned to her weapons officer, a 24-year-old lieutenant named Nate Sutton, who looked scared but steady. "Nate," she said, "what do we have below decks that does not need a computer to fly?" Nate thought for a moment. "The old Harpoon missiles, ma'am. They were supposed to be shipped out for disposal last month. They are still in Storage Bay 7. Can you make them work without the main systems?" Nate swallowed. "I can rewire them to use manual targeting. It will not be accurate, but if we get close enough to something big, we will not need accuracy." Lena looked out the bridge windows at the massive alien ship, hovering over the ocean 10 miles away, blocking out half the sky. "Get to work," she said. "We are going to punch a hole in that thing." Meanwhile, back inside Cheyenne Mountain, Katie Vaughn had finally been connected to General Howard Pace, the senior officer in the command center. He was 61 years old, with a face like a rock and eyes that had seen 2 wars. He listened without interrupting as Katie explained what she had found. "Their whole fleet runs on one signal," she said. "One frequency band. Every ship, every drone, every soldier on the ground takes orders from one central source. If we jam that frequency, we cut the brain off from the body. Everything they have goes dark." General Pace was quiet for a long moment. Then something appeared on his face that Katie did not expect. A smile. "How do we jam it?" he asked. "We need every transmitter on the planet broadcasting noise on their frequency at the same time," Katie said. "Military, civilian, anything that can send a radio signal. If we synchronize them all, we can create a wall of interference they cannot break through." "That is a very big ask," the general said. "Yes, sir, it is," Katie replied, "but it is the only ask that matters." General Pace nodded and turned to his staff. "Get me every communication asset still functioning on this continent. Military, civilian, I don't care. And find me someone who can write the code to make them all sing the same note at the same time." The clock showed 17 minutes since the invasion began. 3 minutes remained before everything would change. 2 days after the assassination attempt, a small package appeared on High Counselor Zorath's desk. This should not have been possible. Zorath's office was located deep inside the central tower on Verath Prime, the most heavily guarded building on the most heavily guarded planet in Dominion space. To reach it, something would have to pass through 3 layers of orbital defense satellites. A planetary shield grid, atmospheric scanners that could detect a single grain of dust entering the wrong airspace, ground-level security checkpoints staffed by armed soldiers, building-wide bioscanners that mapped every living thing within its walls, and Zorath's own personal guard of 12 Velhari operatives who stood watch outside his door at all hours. The package had bypassed all of it. It was small, about the size of 2 fists placed side by side, wrapped in plain brown material. There was no return address, no markings, no indication of how it had arrived or who had placed it there. It was simply sitting in the center of Zorath's desk when he walked into his office that morning, as if it had always been there. Zorath stood in the doorway and stared at it for a long time. He called in his security chief, a Velhari named Torath, who scanned the package with every device available and found nothing dangerous inside. No explosives, no biological agents, no radiation, just a small data chip and a glass bottle containing a brown liquid. Zorath dismissed his security chief and opened the package alone. He picked up the bottle first. It had a label on it with human writing. He ran it through a translator. It was a type of human drink called whiskey. The brand was Maker's Mark. Then he inserted the data chip into his desk console, and pressed play. The recording was from Kale Viret's optical implant. The drop from the ceiling. The blade aimed at the human's skull. The human's hand coming up, calm and precise, catching the wrist. The redirect. The stand. The second blade caught. The eye contact. The smile. And then the twist, and the sharp sound of bone breaking, and Kale falling, and Danny Callahan standing over the body, with that same quiet, polite expression, looking down at the greatest assassin the Dominion had ever produced, as if he were a minor interruption. The recording lasted 7 seconds. It felt much longer. After the visual ended, there was an audio file attached. Danny Callahan's voice filled the room, clear and steady and calm. Counselor Zorath, I am sending you this because I think you deserve to see how your man's mission ended. I also want you to know something. This package made it through every layer of security you have. It is sitting on your desk right now because we put it there. And no one in your entire defense network noticed. I could have put something else in this box, something a lot less friendly than whiskey, but I did not. Because that is not how we do things. Not yet. You sent your best assassin after me, and I broke his neck before my drink got warm. So here's what I'm offering. Stop sending killers. Start sending diplomats. Earth does not kneel. We have said that, and we mean it. But we are not unreasonable people. We will sit down with you. We will talk. We will find an arrangement that works for both sides. Or you can send another assassin, and another one after that. And I will keep handling them the same way. And eventually, you will run out of people to send before I run out of patience. Your choice. Regards, Danny Callahan, Ambassador of Earth. He looked at the bottle of whiskey. He thought about the fact that it had been placed on his desk, inside the most secure room on the most secure planet in his empire, and no one had seen it happen. He thought about what else the humans could have placed there instead. Then he opened the bottle, poured a small amount into a glass, and drank it. It burned going down. Not unpleasant, just strong and sharp and honest. He called an emergency meeting of the inner circle. They gathered that evening in the same windowless room where they had decided to kill Danny Callahan. Zorath played the recording for all 6 counselors. He watched their faces as they saw Kale die. He watched the shock first, then the confusion, and then something else. Something he had not seen on a Dominion counselor's face in a very, very long time. Fear. That is impossible, said Counselor Dreth. She was the youngest of the circle, only 80 years old, and she leaned forward with all 4 of her eyes, blinking rapidly. Kale was the best. He had 70 years of service, 0 failures. How does a human do that? I have spent the last 2 days asking that same question, Zorath said, and the answer is not one I expected. He activated the display screen and began showing files, medical data, combat reports, research from Dominion scientists who have been studying humans since first contact 30 years ago. We classified humanity as a Category 3 species, Zorath said. Average intelligence, average physical ability, average adaptability. We put them in the same group as the Polani and the Greth. Nothing special, nothing to worry about. He paused. We were completely wrong. The data painted a picture that the Dominion had somehow missed, despite having it right in front of them for decades. Humans were not the fastest species. They were not the strongest. They were not the toughest. On paper, they were unremarkable in almost every physical category. But they had something else, something that did not show up in the standard measurements. They never stopped. Their bodies could keep going for hours, sometimes days without rest. They could take injuries that would put other species flat on their backs and just keep moving. Their bones healed, their skin closed over wounds. They could function in heat that would cook a Velhari, and cold that would freeze a Korthani solid. They adapted to everything, and they adapted fast. And more than anything else, they had been fighting for their entire history. Not just wars between nations, though they had fought thousands of those. They had turned combat into something no other species had ever created. They had hundreds of different fighting systems, each one developed over centuries, each one refined and tested in real violence. They did not just learn how to fight. They studied it the way other species studied science or art. They practiced it every single day of their lives. Danny Callahan was not just a former Marine. He was what humans called Special Forces. He had been trained for 20 years in the most advanced combat techniques his species had ever developed. He could kill with his hands, with weapons, with objects that were not designed to be weapons. He had spent 2 decades in the most dangerous places his planet had to offer, and he had survived all of them. The Dominion had sent an assassin after a man whose entire life had been spent preparing for exactly that kind of attack. But it is not just the training, Zorath said. It is something deeper. He pulled up one more file. It was about human psychology, specifically about what happened inside a human brain during combat. Most species panicked when faced with sudden lethal danger. Even trained fighters showed massive stress responses, elevated heart rates, impaired thinking, shaking hands. The Velhari spent decades learning to control these responses, and even their best operatives still showed significant physical signs of stress during a kill. Humans had found a way around this entirely. Through repetitive training, they could rewire their own brains. They could take the fear response, the rush of chemicals that flooded their system when death was close, and convert it into something else. Focus, clarity, calm. Danny Callahan's heart rate during the encounter increased by 9 beats per minute, Zorath said, from 62 to 71. Our analysts say that means killing the best assassin in the galaxy caused him less stress than most humans experience when someone knocks on their door unexpectedly. The chamber was completely silent. Zorath looked at the faces of the most powerful beings in the galaxy and saw something new in every single one of them. Not anger, not pride, not the cold confidence that had carried the Dominion for 6,000 years. He saw doubt. "What do we do?" Dreth asked quietly. Zorath thought about the whiskey, the burn of it in his throat, the message behind it. The humans could have sent a bomb through his security. They could have sent poison, or a virus, or a device that would have killed everyone in the building. Instead, they sent a bottle of their favorite drink, and a polite suggestion to talk. That was what scared him most. Not the violence, the restraint. "We do what the ambassador suggested," Zorath said. The sound was not something you could hear with your ears. It was a wave of electromagnetic noise so thick and so loud that it filled every frequency the aliens used, like water filling a glass. It came from military bases and garage antennas and Coast Guard cutters and university telescopes and radio towers and 1,000 other sources scattered across the surface of the Earth. All of them firing at the same time, on the same frequency, with the same pattern. And it worked. At exactly 19 minutes and 42 seconds after the first alien ship entered the atmosphere, the alien command signal died. The effect was immediate, and it was everywhere. In the streets of Chicago, a line of alien soldiers that had been marching civilians toward a transport ship stopped walking. They just stopped, like puppets whose strings had been cut. Their forearms dropped to their sides. Their dark eyes went blank. The blue lights on their armor flickered once, twice, and then went out. They stood in the middle of the road like statues, doing nothing, seeing nothing, waiting for orders that would never come. In the skies over Europe, alien escort fighters that had been chasing down the last human jets suddenly lost formation. They drifted apart, some spinning in slow circles, others dropping altitude like falling leaves. 2 of them crashed into each other over the English Channel, exploding in a flash of orange and white. Above every city, the great motherships shuddered. Their smooth surfaces rippled with patterns of light, as their systems tried to find the command signal and failed. The ships did not fall, but they stopped moving. They hung in the air like enormous dark clouds, silent and blind. Inside Cheyenne Mountain, Katie Vaughn watched her screens and let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like a lifetime. The alien transmissions were gone, buried under the wall of noise that humanity had thrown at them. Where there had been a clear, organized stream of commands, there was now nothing but chaos. "It is working," she said quietly. Then louder, "It is working. They are deaf." General Pace picked up every phone and radio he could reach. "All forces, all stations, this is General Pace. The enemy is blind. Hit them now. Hit them with everything you have." And humanity hit them. In Texas, Cole Briggs heard the order on his CB radio and let out a war cry that his grandfather would have been proud of. He stood up in the back of his pickup truck, pointed at the line of frozen alien soldiers in the town square, and shouted to his group, "They are standing still. Let us introduce ourselves." 47 civilians with shotguns, hunting rifles, pistols, baseball bats, and one crossbow charged the alien line. The aliens did not react. Without their command signal, they had no instructions, no coordination, no awareness of what was happening around them. Cole's people hit them like a wave hitting rocks, and the dark armor cracked and broke under good old-fashioned lead and steel. Darla Cobb, the woman with the crossbow, put a bolt through the neck joint of an alien soldier from 30 feet away and was already loading another before the first one hit the ground. Similar scenes played out across the world. In Atlanta, a group of police officers and firefighters rushed an alien patrol with riot shields and service weapons. In Ohio, farmers drove combines and tractors into alien landing craft that sat helpless in cornfields. In Japan, a retired martial arts instructor led his students in a charge against a group of alien drones using wooden training swords. And it worked, because the drones had no instructions to defend themselves. They came out of basements and closets and shelters. And when they saw that the aliens were frozen, something changed in their faces. The fear left. Something older and harder took its place. It was the look of people who had been pushed too far and were done being afraid. On the Atlantic Ocean, Captain Lena Price gave the order she had been waiting to give since the first alien ship appeared on her horizon. "Nate," she said into the phone, "fire everything." Below decks, Nate Sutton pulled the manual firing lever on the first Harpoon missile. The old rocket engine ignited with a roar that shook the entire ship, and the missile flew out of the cargo bay door on a tail of white smoke. Then the second. Then the third. Then the fourth. The missiles were old, and their targeting was rough, but the alien mothership was the size of a small town, and it was only 10 miles away. Missing was not really possible. The first missile hit the underside of the alien ship and bounced off the hull, exploding harmlessly in the air below. The second hit the same area and left a black mark, but did not break through. The third missile found a gap. It hit a spot near what looked like an engine opening, where the hull was thinner and the armor had seams. The warhead punched through and detonated inside the ship. A column of fire erupted from the hole, followed by a deep groaning sound that seemed to come from the ship itself, like a living thing in pain. The fourth missile followed the third through the same hole and exploded deeper inside. The mothership tilted to one side. Pieces of its hull began falling off like scales from a fish. It dropped lower and lower over the ocean, trailing smoke and fire until it hit the water with an impact that sent a wave 50 feet high, rolling in every direction. Nate Sutton watched from the deck of the Dauntless as the alien ship sank beneath the Atlantic. He was shaking. His hands were burned from the hot metal of the missile controls. But he was smiling. Around the world, military forces that had been crushed in the first 10 minutes came roaring back. Fighter pilots who had been hiding their jets behind mountains and in valleys took to the sky and found alien escorts drifting without purpose. They picked them off one by one. Submarines surfaced and fired torpedoes at alien ships hovering low over coastal cities. In Russia, an artillery brigade that had hidden its guns in a forest rolled them out and opened fire on a grounded alien transport, turning it into a burning wreck in 30 seconds. Then the aliens tried to recover. In orbit above the Earth, the alien command vessel, a ship 3 times the size of any of the others, began broadcasting on a new frequency. It was trying to re-establish contact with its fleet, to wake up the drones and soldiers and get the invasion back on track. Katie Vaughn saw it immediately on her screens. A new signal, strong and sharp, cutting through the noise. "They are switching frequencies," she shouted across the room. "New signal at 4.7 gigahertz. She did not wait for orders. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, recalculating the jamming pattern and broadcasting the new target frequency to every transmitter in the network. Greg Tran's synchronization code was designed to accept updates, and within 8 seconds, every jammer on the planet shifted to the new frequency. The alien command signal died again. The command ship tried a 3rd frequency. Katie killed it in 5 seconds. It tried a 4th. She killed it in 3. The aliens were fast, but Katie was faster, because she was not just listening anymore. She understood their system now. She could predict where they would go next, before they went there. Nate Sutton was standing on the bridge of the Dauntless when he saw something through his binoculars that made his heart jump. The command ship in orbit, visible as a dark shape against the blue sky, was flickering. Its shields were failing. He grabbed the radio. "All ships, all stations, the big one is exposed. Its shields are down. Hit it now. Everything you have. Now." Every naval vessel within range opened fire at the same time. Missiles, torpedoes, railgun rounds, everything that still worked, flew upward toward the command ship. Air Force jets that had been engaging smaller targets broke off and fired their remaining missiles at the same target. The command ship's shields collapsed. The combined fire of half the world's remaining military forces struck the ship in a single devastating wave. It broke apart in orbit, splitting into 3 huge pieces that glowed white-hot as they fell into the upper atmosphere. From the ground, it looked like a second sun had appeared in the sky, bright and terrible and beautiful. Katie Vaughn watched the signal from the command ship disappear from her screen. One moment it was there, screaming and fighting to reach its fleet. The next moment, it was gone. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. "It is over," she whispered. The clock on the wall read 20 minutes even. At the 20-minute mark, the alien invasion of Earth was over. Without their command ship, the remaining alien vessels had no brain, no plan, and no way to talk to each other. Some of them tried to run. They turned their massive bodies toward the sky and pushed their engines as hard as they could, trying to escape back into space. But they were slow without coordination, and the humans were not slow at all. Reorganized air forces from a dozen countries intercepted them before they reached the upper atmosphere. Ground-based missile batteries, hastily reconnected with car batteries and manual switches, fired everything they had at the fleeing ships. Most of them never made it out of the sky. Others crash-landed. A mothership came down in the farmlands of Kansas, digging a trench half a mile long in the wheat fields before it stopped moving. Another landed in a forest in Germany. Another dropped into the shallow waters off the coast of Australia. Within hours, local populations had surrounded every crash site, standing in rings around the fallen ships with weapons in their hands and hard looks on their faces. The alien ground troops were in the worst position of all. Cut off from their command signal, they stood motionless in the streets of cities around the world, unable to act, unable to think, unable to do anything but wait. Some of them stayed frozen. Others seemed to slowly wake up, as if some small part of their own minds was coming back to life without the signal telling them what to do. And when they woke up, they were afraid. In a field outside Richmond, Virginia, a group of alien soldiers stumbled out of a crashed landing craft. Their armor was cracked, and their weapons hung loose in their hands. They moved slowly, looking around with their 4 dark eyes at a world that had just beaten them. They saw humans standing at the edge of the field, holding guns and axes and baseball bats, watching them with cold, steady eyes. A high school history teacher named Amy Dawson was standing at the front of the group. She was 31 years old, with red hair tied back in a ponytail and dirt on her face from spending the last 20 minutes hiding in a ditch with her students. She looked at the alien soldiers and saw something she recognized. She had seen it on the faces of her students during fire drills and lockdowns. She had seen it in the mirror on her worst days. Fear. Amy set her shotgun on the ground and held up her empty hands. She walked toward the aliens slowly, one step at a time, while the people behind her whispered for her to stop and come back. She did not stop. The alien at the front of the group raised one of its 4 arms. For a terrible second, everyone thought it was reaching for its weapon, but it was not. It was raising its hand the same way Amy had raised hers. Open, empty. The translator device on its chest crackled with static, and then a single word came out in rough, broken English. Mercy. The alien lowered itself to the ground. Then the others did the same. They knelt in the dirt and put their weapons down and repeated the word. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Amy Dawson, high school teacher from Richmond, Virginia, became the first human being to accept an alien surrender. She did it with nothing but calm words and open hands. And later, when reporters asked her why she did it, she said, "Because winning means you get to choose who you are after the fight. And I choose to be kind." The world was battered. Every major city had suffered damage from the electromagnetic pulses. Thousands of people were injured from the panic and the fighting. It would take months to rebuild what the aliens had broken in 20 minutes. But the death toll was remarkably low. The aliens had come to capture, not to kill. Their weapons were designed to stun, not to destroy. And because humanity had fought back so fast, the collection had barely begun before it was stopped. Most of the people who had been gathered by alien soldiers were found sitting in open fields and parking lots, dazed but alive, freed by the same neighbors who had charged into battle with hunting rifles and garden tools. 3 days after the invasion, General Howard Pace held a press conference from inside Cheyenne Mountain. The blast doors were open for the first time since the crisis began, and sunlight poured down the tunnel like a river of gold. Standing next to the general was Katie Vaughn, who had not slept in 3 days and looked like it, but who stood straight and steady, with her hands folded behind her back. General Pace stepped to the microphone and looked into the cameras that were broadcasting to every screen on the planet. 20 minutes, he said. They gave us 20 minutes of hell. They came from across the stars, with technology we had never seen, and weapons we could not match. They thought they could collect us like specimens and take us away from our home. He paused and looked at the people standing around him, soldiers and civilians, young and old, people who had fought back with everything from billion-dollar warships to homemade antennas. In 20 minutes, every person on this planet, soldier and civilian, young and old, every nation and every creed, stood up and said the same thing. No, not today, not ever, not us. Then someone started clapping, and then everyone was clapping, and the sound echoed through the mountain like thunder. A reporter asked Katie Vaughn what she thought the aliens had underestimated most about humanity. Katie thought about it for a moment. She thought about Danny Holloway at his radar screen, the first to see them coming. She thought about Cole Briggs standing in the back of a pickup truck with a shotgun. She thought about Lena Price refusing to give up on a dead ship. She thought about Nate Sutton rewiring missiles with cut hands. She thought about Greg Tran writing code in 11 minutes that saved the world. She thought about Peggy Sloan in her garage with copper wire and a car battery. She thought about Ray Dominguez on his little Coast Guard boat, rewiring his antenna to join the fight. She thought about Amy Dawson walking toward the enemy with open hands. She thought about all of them, and she gave her answer. They thought we needed a network to fight, she said. They did not understand that we are the network, every single one of us. In the weeks that followed, humanity began picking up the pieces and building something new. Scientists tore apart the captured alien technology and discovered things that would change the world forever. New energy sources, new materials, new ways to travel through space that had seemed impossible just a month ago. Cole Briggs was awarded the Medal of Honor at a ceremony in Washington. He wore his old Marine dress uniform, which was a little tight around the middle, and told reporters he was just doing what any Texan would do. Captain Lena Price was promoted to Rear Admiral and given command of a new fleet that would be built using a mix of human and alien technology. Nate Sutton became the youngest officer to receive the Navy Cross, and said he was just glad the old missiles still worked. Greg Tran's jamming code was printed out and placed in the Smithsonian Institution. Peggy Sloan's homemade antenna was displayed in the case right next to it. Ray Dominguez went back to the Coast Guard and told everyone who asked that the whole thing was just another Tuesday. And Katie Vaughn, the signals analyst who heard the weakness in the alien song, went back to her desk inside Cheyenne Mountain. She sat down in her chair, put on her headset, and turned to her console. The screens glowed softly in the dim room, showing wave after wave of signals coming in from deep space. She listened. Because the universe is vast, and the next signal could come at any time. It might come tomorrow. It might come in 100 years. It might come from something even bigger and more dangerous than what they had just faced. But now it would find humanity ready, not because of their weapons or their technology or their governments, but because of who they are. A species that fights back, a species that stands up, a species that looks at the impossible and says, "Watch me." Katie Vaughn smiled, leaned forward and kept listening. The stars were quiet tonight, but she was patient, and she was not afraid. It was a normal Tuesday morning when the world changed forever. Danny Holloway sat in his chair at the Denver Airport Control Tower, drinking his second cup of coffee and watching the green lines sweep across his radar screen. He had been doing this job for 9 years, and every day looked the same. Planes came in, planes went out, and nothing ever surprised him anymore. But at exactly 8:47 in the morning, something surprised him very much. His radar screen filled with dots, not one or two, but hundreds of them, dropping down from the upper sky at speeds that no airplane could ever reach. Danny set his coffee down slowly and leaned forward. His hands were shaking. He pressed the emergency button on his console and picked up his phone. "This is Denver Tower," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have multiple unknown contacts descending through the atmosphere. This is not a drill." Within 30 seconds, every military base in the country received the same warning. Phones rang in the Pentagon. Alarms sounded at Air Force bases from California to Virginia. Satellites turned their cameras upward and captured images that no human had ever seen before. Massive ships were coming down through the clouds. Each one was bigger than a football stadium, dark and smooth like polished stone, with no wings and no visible engines. They moved in perfect lines, one after another, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. They came down over New York and Los Angeles, over London and Paris, over Beijing and Moscow. Wherever there were people, the ships appeared. In Washington, D.C., Secretary of Defense Kevin Marsh was pulled out of a meeting and rushed through underground tunnels to the Pentagon War Room. When he arrived, the giant screens on the walls showed satellite images of the alien fleet spreading across the planet like a dark blanket. "How many?" he asked. "Over 300 confirmed, sir," an officer answered. "More arriving every minute." Before anyone could form a plan, the aliens made their first move. A deep hum filled the air around every major city. And then the power went out. Not just in one place, but everywhere. The aliens sent out waves of energy that killed every electrical system they touched. Lights went dark. Computers died. Cars stopped in the middle of roads. Hospitals switched to backup generators, and then those died too. The aliens sent a message next. It came through on every radio frequency, every television channel that still worked, every phone that still had power. It was translated into every language on Earth, spoken in a flat, cold voice that had no feeling in it at all. Compliance ensures survival. People stood in the streets and looked up at the giant ships blocking out the sun. Some screamed, some ran, some just stood there, too afraid to move. In those first 5 minutes, the world felt like it was ending. But deep inside Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, behind blast doors built to survive a nuclear war, a young woman named Katie Vaughn was not afraid. She was focused. Katie was 26 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes from too many late nights staring at screens. She was a signals analyst, which meant her job was to listen to radio waves and find patterns in them. She had spent 4 years listening to boring military chatter and satellite noise, but now, for the first time in her life, she was listening to something that was not from Earth. The alien transmissions filled her headphones like a rushing river of strange sounds. Most of the people around her were panicking, shouting into phones that no longer worked, or staring at dead screens. But Katie closed her eyes and listened. She let the sounds wash over her, and she did what she had been trained to do. She looked for the pattern, and she found it. Every alien ship, every drone, every ground unit was sending and receiving signals on the same frequency band. It was like they were all connected to one giant brain. One central command signal controlled everything. If a drone moved left, it was because the signal told it to. If a ship changed course, it was because the signal guided it. There was no backup system. There was no second channel. Everything the aliens did ran through one single point. Katie pulled off her headphones and stood up so fast that her chair rolled back and hit the wall. She looked around the room, full of panicking officers, and spotted the red phone on the far wall, the one that connected directly to the command center. She ran to it and picked it up. A voice on the other end asked for her identification. "Analyst Katie Vaughn, Signals Division," she said. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge right now." "Ma'am, we're in the middle of a crisis. Every line is being used for—" "I know how to fight them," Katie said. Her voice was calm and clear, and something in it made the person on the other end go quiet. "Hold the line," he said. Katie held the phone to her ear and looked up at the ceiling, as if she could see through the mountain and the rock and the sky to the alien ships above. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but her mind was steady. She had found the weakness. Now she just needed someone to listen. Outside, the world was falling apart. The alien ships had opened their bellies, and smaller craft were dropping out of them, like seeds from a flower, landing in parks and parking lots and open fields. Dark figures moved inside the smaller craft, preparing to come out and begin whatever terrible work they had come to do. Humanity had been given no warning, no time to prepare, no chance to negotiate. The aliens had come like a hammer falling on glass, expecting everything to shatter. But glass can cut. And somewhere deep inside a mountain, a young woman with tired eyes and a sharp mind had just found the crack in the hammer. The clock on Katie's wall showed that 5 minutes had passed since the first ship appeared. The invasion had begun, but so had the fight.